Hello again, folks, and welcome to part 3 of the IXP Manager and root servers video tutorial series. In this one, we're going to actually look at deploying root servers with IXP Manager. Just as a quick summary of parts 1 and 2, in case you haven't watched them, you probably should. But what we covered in parts 1 and 2 was we went through an introduction to root servers, what they are and why they are needed. We hopefully have an understanding now of why they need to be secure and the very important responsibility on internet exchanges to ensure that they are secure. We've seen how IXP Manager generates the configuration. We've examined the basic structure of that config, the boilerplate, as well as the per client configuration. And we've got a working root server configuration. So now we need to look at how do we get this onto a server and how do we build a root server. So I have a demonstration system on my own laptop. As I mentioned, I built this as part of an APNIC webinar I did earlier on today, and I just wanted to use that infrastructure to create these further tutorial videos while I had them. So I've got a VirtualBox on my own laptop. I've built a Ubuntu 2004 virtual machine for IXP Manager, which is what we've already looked at in the other sessions. I've built a virtual machine for the root server, which we look at now shortly, and I've got 3 VMs up and running with pretend networks, pretend root servers, so actual bird instances that will advertise roots in for our 3 sample customers or members. You can see those all running here in my VirtualBox. So I've got my IXP Manager, I've got my root server, and I've got my 3 clients. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build a root server. So what I have is a bare bones, nothing on it, Ubuntu 2004 installation. So nothing running on it, and just a simple VM 2004. What I'm going to be following is the instructions very much from our documentation. So on docs.ixpmanager.org under features, and then under router configuration, there's a bunch of configuration and instructions around how to do this. And this is what I'm following here, okay? So this stuff is documented, but hopefully this video will add more context to that for anyone who needs to do it. So we're going to start by installing Bird. And on Ubuntu 2004, Bird 2 is ready to go. So that's Bird installed in a second. What the installation includes some stuff under etc Bird. I don't want to use those, and I don't want Bird to be started by the system. Sorry, was that meant to be Bird? Yeah, I don't want it to be started by the system either. So, right, so I want to just disable it and stop it just in case it's running. Make sure that it's not running now. Okay, so nothing running here. I'm going to go into user local bin, and this should be empty. Good, it is. So linked from the documentation on IXP Manager's GitHub website, Linux/IXP Manager. So on our website, we have a lot of tools and scripts that make automating stuff around IXP Manager much easier. And one of those is scripts for downloading and reconfiguring your root server. So it's in the root directory under tools, under runtime, under root servers. And the script that I want is API reconfigure example bird v2, because we're using bird v2. And I want the raw version of that file. So copy link. So let's just get that. I'm just going to rename it to API reconfigure. And we're on root server 1 here, so I'm going to call it RS1. When we look at that file, it's only really the first bits here that I need to be concerned with. And if you're running Ubuntu, then pretty much everything here is okay, except the top 3 bits. You just need to give it your API key, which I showed you in part 2. I'm just going to pop it in here now. And you need to give it, you need to tell it where your IXP Manager is. And in my case, it's HTTP : 192.168.140.210. Okay, I need to do that twice. So Just have to tell it where my IXP Manager is, and that's all I'm doing here. Okay, so that's that done. I've just changed those two parameters. I want to make that file executable. And then I'm going to run it. Now, it's telling me a handle is required. That's perfectly fine. The handle, as we mentioned when you were setting up your router, is the name you gave it at the very top of the configuration, RS1-IPv4. So give it the handle. Okay, this is fine. This is a check. When we pull down the root server config, that script, that API reconfigure script, it does a few tests to make sure that we haven't got rubbish from IXP Manager, that something hasn't gone wrong on the web server or something else. And one of the checks it does, it makes sure that there's at least two client configurations, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense to be running a root server. So in part 2, I only enabled the root server for HEAnet. I'm just going to pop into Aptus here, and I'm going to enable Aptus as root server by just clicking this box here. And in the same way, I'm going to pop into my other sample member. I'm going to edit him or her, and I'm going to enable the client there. So if I do that one more time, and in fact, before I do that, let me just show you. If I refresh my configuration, you should see now that I've got two extra clients. So there's SkyTel and there's Aptus. So we've got all our client config in there now. And sorry, if you were wondering what I was doing there, this is this page. We covered it in part 2. Under routers, I can generate the configuration here, and that's all I did there. I just refreshed that page. So let's try this one more time. Okay. Look at that, folks. We've got Bird up and running. So what that script did was, if we take a quick look at it, makes a lot of directories if they don't already exist. So it sets up everything. You can see there, I didn't actually create any directories, or I simply downloaded a script, put in the parameters at the top, made it executable, and executed it. Everything else was handled by this script, which hopefully makes life really, really easy for most of you. What we do is this command here gets the configuration file from IXP Manager, and then we go through a bunch of checks. And once we're happy with all the checks, and the checks, by the way, include seeing if Bird is running. If Bird isn't running, it will start it. There we are. Are we running, or do we need to be started? So it looks for Bird. It's not running, it starts it. If it is running, we reconfigure it. So part of the reconfiguration is doing a Bird syntax check on the configuration file. And if that passes, we tell Bird to reconfigure itself. So that's part of the idempotent, session-based reconfiguration that we discussed in part 2 as well. We can just replace the configuration file in its entirety and tell Bird to reload. The other thing that's important is if the file that we download, we do a diff against the existing file, and if there's no changes, nothing happens. We don't annoy Bird at all. We just leave it run away in the background. So, sorry, I was talking there that we've got Bird up and running. So there it is running there. And what do we want to do with it? There's my socket. So you need the socket. If you want to interact with Bird, you need the socket. So here's my Bird daemon. Let's see, show protocols. Right, look at this. We've got 1, 2, 3 established BGP sessions. Because if I remember, I told you that I have these clients running already as part of my setup, that they were just waiting for Bird to be configured. So I had these 3 clients already running in the background. They've all connected up. I can do a show root now, and I can see a bunch of routes that are being advertised by these clients. Let's dig into any one of these routes. Let's just grab this guy here for a second. In fact, let's grab something smaller. So let's say show root. Do I need to put in protocol, or do I just type protocol? Protocol. So that's the That is the configuration. That's what the BGP protocol is called. What are we looking at here? Aptus. So if I just scroll down to the end, that's it there, look. So that's the actual BGP protocol. So protocol BGP, our standard is PB is the BGP protocol and PP is the pipe protocol. So I want to show protocol that, and I want to show the routes, all routes. I just want to highlight one or two things for you. Sorry, show root protocol. So here's a route /21. The AS path only has one AS number. It doesn't have the root server's AS number. Sorry, that wouldn't matter because we're on the root server. Let's look at the client. Apologies. So I'm on my client now. And my client is running Bird version 1. Let's just have a quick look at its config. It's a really simple config. I've just created some static null routes. Those guys there. And in my BGP protocol, I've just configured the root server neighbor with the neighbor's AS, my local AS number, and I'm just exporting whatever's in the static protocol, just those routes. Simple as that. So I'm in Bird here, so show root, and what we'll see here is that we've learned a bunch of routes from the root server. So let's just dig into one of these routes. Show, just to try and highlight what's important about root servers. So the root for this prefix, the root for this prefix here, I've learned it from 2.8, which is the root server, but my gateway is via .32, so that's directly via the other member's router. That's really important. And again, the AS path is really important. The root server 65501, it's not in the AS path. Okay, so it's just being passed on transparently. So that's what makes root servers really important. The other thing, if we go back to the root server and look at some of these routes, so we were on the root server here, and if I just have a look at all the routes here, you can see that they all have these large communities. 1000, 3, 1001, 2. These are the tags, that the informational tags that we were added. Let's see what they mean. 1000, 3. What is that one? So up to our definitions. 1000, 3. Or PKI not checked because we haven't configured it yet. What's the other one? 1001, 2. IORDB not checked because we haven't configured that either. Okay, so we can see that straight away. Obviously, it's very unwieldy to be trying to do that within Bird. That's why we'll have a looking glass in a little while. Right, so that is quite simply our root server deployed. Now, what we haven't gone into detail here, in fact, let me just pull us back up to the presentation. So we deployed our root server there in 10 minutes or so. We installed Bird 2. We downloaded the reconfiguration script from the GitHub URL, the GitHub repository for IXP Manager. We added the URL and the API key to that script, and we ran it. And lo and behold, our root server was up and running. Now, what are we skipping? Well, you know, we're just showing you here how to spin up and deploy a root server. We're not going to get into the business of telling you how to fully manage your servers at your own exchange. That's sort of out of scope for us. So, you know, when you're deploying a root server at your exchange, the full commissioning of that root server should include appropriate firewalling, you know, IP tables, for example. Set up full monitoring with Nagios or whatever tool that you use to make sure that you know if it's up or down. Documentation so that your fellow engineers know how to get onto it, how to start and stop the Bird daemon, how to do simple troubleshooting. So all of the kind of things that you imagine are important for actual full deployment. So what we've done here so far in our demonstration is we built a root server, and I've showed you clients connected, and I've showed you some routes. What we're going to do next, we're going to build an IPv6 instance. We're going to install a looking glass, and we're going to look at some community filtering. And we're going to do all of that here in part 3. Part 4 is going to be about IORDB, and part 5 is going to be about RPKI. So we're going to do those ones later on. So as I say, the first thing that we want to do here is the IPv6 instance. So as you can imagine, you saw how easy it was to do it here. So it shouldn't surprise you to learn that it's going to be pretty easy to do the v6 version. So back to my IXP Manager, back to my routers. So this is where I am in IXP Manager. I want to add another router. This time I'm going to call it RS1-IPv6. Again, my peering VLAN. This time IPv6. It's a root server again. I'm just going to call it -IPv6, call it -IPv6. The router ID is going to be the same as the IPv4 version, because really it's two halves of the same coin here. Root server 1 v4 and root server 1 v6. My peering IP address is going to be the IPv6 version. My AS number, again, as I said before, this is mostly free text, so it doesn't particularly matter that much. We'll just get the right things in there. So the host is the same. We're going to use bird's eye, and in this case we're going to use this URL, public. We'll come back to that again shortly. Large communities, pass through, and the template will be the same as before. So the template it doesn't use the same template for v4 and v6. IXP Manager will do the right thing. So here we are. That's our new handle. We're going to have a very quick look at the config. One of the things I said earlier on is that if it's v6, you can see the Martians are just swapped out for the IPv6 versions of the same thing. Pretty much everything else looks very standard, except when we get down to our peers, you can see we've switched to IPv6 addressing. Okay, so let's deploy that. This is hopefully as easy as you think it might be. Give it the handle. RS1-IPv6. What happened? There's a new instance up and running. And there we have 3 established sessions and a handful of routes. Okay, that easy. There is one huge caveat here. If you have 2 root servers, you definitely don't want to fat finger and type RS2 while you're on RS1, for example. So in our own scripts at INEX, we actually edit this API reconfigure script to the appropriate server. And for the RS1 server, which is why we name it -RS1, if the handle we're given does not start with RS1, it will error out. It won't let you proceed. So you just want to be a little bit careful about that. And again, at INEX, you know, we've got 2 LANs in Dublin, so we actually have 4 instances of root server 1 running on the root server 1 server. We've got RS1 v4 v6 for LAN 1 and RS1 v4 v6 for INEX LAN 2. So we have an additional little utility script, which I'm going to show you. Back where we got the reconfigure script, where was that? Here. So back here on GitHub under INEX/IXP Manager, tools, runtime, root servers, we took this script just there. I'm going to take this second script, API reconfigure all. I'm going to get the raw version of it. I'm going to copy that link. So back to my user local sbin on my root server. Just going to get that. I'm going to make it executable. Sorry. So what this does is it executes the script that we were running all along, which I renamed to RS1, for each handle that we feed it. So I'm going to feed it 2 handles, RS1-IPv4, IPv6. So this is just a utility script. Just a little bit, makes it a little bit easier than running the other one twice. You can see there, that's what it does. Now, what I would do with this script, so /user local sbin reconfigure all, and then that can take a quiet. Can it? It takes something, I think. Let's see. Oh, it says quiet to the other one. All right, gotcha. So it just runs the way it is. Okay, so what I would do is I would take that and I would go to my cron tab, and maybe I would kick this off at 12 minutes past the hour, for example. Just set it askew by maybe 30 minutes to your other root server. I would just set that up like that. Okay, that would ensure that every hour my root server would be reconfigured. And again, remember, if the config hasn't changed, bird isn't touched. The other thing, you want it to run on boot up. And one good way of doing that is to use RC local. So check your relevant operating systems documentation and see the appropriate use of RC local. Essentially, it's something that's run on boot as long as the file exists and is executable. But you want to just double check with your operating system that it will work, and that will ensure it runs on boot. So when you boot up your root server, the actual bird instances will reconfigure and start running. And then every hour on whatever offset you set in the cron tab, it'll reconfigure itself. Okay, so that's our deployment, as easy as that. So there was two other things I was going to do, which I will actually break into 2 other videos. So I'll stop here. And we will have a look in part 4 at installing the looking glass and at some of the community filtering. All right, I think it's better to break it up. So we'll talk to you again shortly. Thank you very much.